All right, now that we got our preferences out of the way, we're going to take a look now at the new CS3 interface. So what I'm going to have you do is go ahead and open up a file just by hitting Control-O on the PC, Command-O on the Mac. And I'm going to have you go into your Project Files folder, which should be on your desktop, and go into the Chapter 1 folder and select welcome.jpg. Once you do that, just go ahead and click Open, and it will automatically jump right into this file right here inside of PhotoshopCS3. And this is just to kind of have something on the screen so that you're aware of the image window itself and how it works and how it's going to operate as you work throughout Photoshop. So here's this little welcome image here, and over here on the left hand side we have the toolbar, and the CS3 toolbar is pretty new actually because it's a single column toolbar as opposed to previous versions of Photoshop where you had the double column toolbar. Now for those of you who are used to that 2-column toolbar, if you want to get that back, it's a very easy fix. Come up here to the top of this toolbar and just click this little double arrow icon right here, and once you do that you'll notice it automatically switches back into that 2-column look that you're familiar with. Now the tools themselves have not changed. There's a couple of new additions, but they're just merged within different groups here. So there's not actually any new groupings of the tools themselves. You still have your selection group on top. You have your painting and retouching group in the middle. Next you have your vector groups right underneath those. And then you have your information or annotation groups right underneath there that has your note tool, your zoom tool, and so forth and so on. Now right underneath those you have your current foreground and background colors, which there's nothing new there. And you have the little toggle switch that'll let you go back and forth between those two. Now, the two bottom icons here at the bottom of the toolbar, these are actually different than they used to be inside of Photoshop. Previously, Quick Mask Mode was a 2-button setup. In this case, it's only 1 button, so you click once to get in, once to get out. We'll explain a little bit more about what Quick Mask Mode is later on in a different chapter. And then at the very bottom, you have your screen modes. And there's nothing really different about these except for the fact that we have a new screen mode in Photoshop CS3 and one that I recommend that you work in and one that I'm actually working in right now. It's called Maximize Screen Mode. So let's go ahead and take a look at exactly what Maximize Screen Mode allows you to do here inside of Photoshop CS3. Let me go ahead now and I'll switch this back to the single column toolbar just because I prefer to work with the single column toolbar, but also to show you exactly how Maximize Screen Mode works. You'll notice that we have this full screen like setup here, and when I move this back here to change this toolbar back to single column, watch the screen area in between the panels on the right hand side and the toolbar here on the left. When I click this, do you see the image resize itself? That's because when you're in Maximize Screen Mode, it automatically gives you the maximum amount of screen real estate between your toolbar and your panels here on the right hand side. So no matter what you have open in between these two areas right here, you will always get the maximum amount of screen real estate possible. That's a great thing about Maximize Screen Mode, and another great thing about it is the fact that, especially when you're on the Macintosh platform, you're now locked into the program. I know a lot of times when I'm working on a Macintosh, I'll accidentally click outside of the program and it'll take me to my desktop or the Finder or something like that. Well, with the new Maximize Screen Mode, you cannot click outside of here. This dark gray area has you locked into the program, so it's much like the Windows interface in the fact that you can't accidentally click outside of your window, yet you still get that nice full screen ability. So that's a great new advantage that they've added here with this nice new screen mode called Maximize Screen Mode. We're going to move over here to the right hand side and take a look at the new panel system. And yes, I did say panels, I did not say palettes, and that is because Adobe has officially changed the name of this system over here on the right hand side from palettes to panels. So for years we've been calling these things palettes, but now we're calling them panels simply because of the fact that now they are all docked together in this big paneling system over here. So what I mean by docked together is that they're all attached and you can resize them dynamically with one another. As you can see here, if I want to enlarge the navigator window, I automatically resize the layers panel, and vice versa, if I wanted to increase the size of the layers panel, I would shrink the size of the navigator window. So all of these things are dynamically sizable together, and you still have your ability to drag these out into individual panels by themselves, but it's a whole lot easier just to keep them grouped in their original groupings here so that you have the ability to maximize and minimize their size and to keep them in these nice groupings to where you know exactly where everything is. Now, another thing you'll notice is the fact that there are no more palette wells up here at the top. The palette well was a small little gray icon up here at the top of the options bar that you had inside of Photoshop CS2 that allowed you to store all kinds of different palettes and things into it, things that you didn't want cluttering up your workspace, but yet you still found useful and that you thought you needed on your image or whatever it is you might have been working on. So instead of having that palette well up here taking up real estate at the top of the options bar, now they have all of the palettes that you still want to use but don't want cluttering your workspace right here on this left-hand side in these little docked icons. Now, you don't lose any functionality with these. As you can see, they're still fully expandable panels here, but you go ahead and click once to expand and click once to contract, but they're still the exact same as they were in any other version of Photoshop. You still have all of the different options that you have in here, such as the history and actions panels here. Go ahead and contract those back. Here's your tool presets here, and as you can see, you can resize these as big as you want them, and they won't affect anything at all. So go ahead and expand these out to see the full version of the panels, and then go ahead and contract them back whenever you're done with them, and that way they don't clutter up your workspace, but they're still right there in case you need them. So here again is the brushes, and it's also accompanied by the clone source, which is a new feature to CS3, something we'll cover in the retouching chapter later on. Also, we have the character and paragraph styles right here built into the paneling system, which is an amazing thing for me because if you remember correctly, in the previous versions of Photoshop, you had the paragraph and character button up here in the options bar, and it was always a real pain for me to go up there and have to find that little button to launch those things every time, or I'd have to go to the window menu every single time. Well, now they have very wisely docked these into the paneling system so that you have quick and easy access to the character and paragraphs panels right here in this little side dock that they have in this program. Also, at the very bottom is the layers comps panel, and we're going to be talking more about layer comps and how to utilize those later on in another chapter, but this is an amazing little panel that you should use all the time for variations and things like that when you're working on different projects. So go ahead and close that up now. Remember, you just go ahead and click once to expand, click once to contract, and you'll have the full functionality of all those different panels all docked right next to your main paneling system here on the right hand side. Now, the main panels themselves are all still the same. You still have the same groupings and so forth. The navigator panel up here has the navigator window inside of that. You also have the histogram panel and the information panel up here, which is a very useful tool when working on photographs because you get all the RGB values, you get your X and Y coordinates, your width and height, document size, and so forth and so on. So this is something that I recommend, besides the histogram, something that I recommend you check on all the time while you're working in Photoshop. We'll talk more about the information and histogram panels in a later chapter. We're going to move down here to the swatches, styles, and color panels. These are all still the same. Nothing really new to report in these. They're still docked just like the rest of them. They're dynamically sizable, everything like that. And then we come down here and we have, of course, the main eyes and ears of Photoshop CS3, and that's the layers panel. This is something that's going to be the most important thing, yet it's one of the most confusing things as well. A lot of people have trouble thinking in terms of layers, but hopefully by the end of the series we'll have a better understanding for how layers work and exactly why they're so useful when working inside of Photoshop CS3, as well as a better understanding of the channels panel. So this is a very useful thing, especially when you're working in different portions of an image such as sharpening or working with color or things like that. So we'll take a closer look at the channels panel in a later portion of this series as well. The last part of this would be the paths panel, and this is going to be where you make a lot of your selections and store some of your work paths when you're making selections and things like that. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well later on. Now, one of the greatest things about this entire new paneling system over here on the right hand side is the ability to shrink it all into a nice small docked toolbar. So I can come up here and I can click this double arrow icon right here and watch this. It shrinks itself right into this nice little docked icon toolbar. It's much like the dock that you had originally here on the left hand side, except now you have all of the main panels shrunken down as well. So now you can open these just like you could any other panel on that main dock that you had, and it's just a great way to work here to maximize that screen real estate for those of you who don't have the luxury of having two monitors, or for those of you who are working on a smaller screen like a laptop screen. This is really going to benefit you to have these smaller docked icons here on the right hand side. And to even take that one step further, if you're familiar with Photoshop and you know the tab trick, which hides all of your palettes in previous versions of Photoshop, now with these panels you have the ability to hide them much like you do the start menu in the Windows operating system. So go ahead now and hold down Shift and press Tab on your keyboard, and that's going to take all of those panels away. But if you take your mouse over here on the right hand side and mouse over, you'll see that these panels come back just for the moment that you need them, so you can access whatever you need to, change colors, work with a layer, anything you need to do there. Go ahead and then contract those so that they go ahead and merge themselves back with the original panels there. Then when you're done making your edits or working with anything you need to over here, go ahead and mouse back over into your image window, and the panels automatically resize and go off the screen again so that they're hidden. So this gives you the maximum amount of screen real estate possible here. For those of you working on smaller monitors, this is absolutely amazing. So now just remember, mouse over to get it to pop right back up. Do whatever you need to do inside of here. Then go ahead and move your mouse back over into the image window to collapse those back over to the side again. Now, if you want to bring these back permanently, just go ahead and hit Shift-Tab on your keyboard again, and that's going to bring those back so that they're just attached here to the right-hand side. And, of course, if you wanted to bring back the original paneling system, just go ahead and click this double arrow again to expand them out into their full form here inside of Photoshop. Now, the last thing we're going to take a look at here inside the new interface is this little quick jump button right up here in the options bar. And what this allows you to do is jump to specific workspaces at any given time when you're working here. So you can jump to any number of these: automation, color and tonal correction, image analysis, painting and retouching. These are some amazing workspaces that Photoshop has built in for you here. So for instance, let's go ahead and jump into the image analysis workspace really quickly. Photoshop's going to come up and say, the selected workspace will modify your menu and or keyboard shortcuts. Would you like to apply this workspace? Yes, if we're going to be working with image analysis, we want all of the different shortcuts and image windows and everything. We want it all set specifically for that workspace. So we're going to go ahead and click yes to this. And you'll notice over here on the right-hand side, we have all of these panels that are contextual to that image analysis that we were talking about earlier. So we have the navigator panel, the info panel, and the history panel all over here. The layers panel is still over here, but it's collapsed down here at the bottom. Now, if you're in a specific workspace and you want to go ahead and change that workspace around, you can do so. So if you wanted to expand this palette up a little bit, you can go ahead and double click that, and it will automatically expand that panel up. Now, it will close up your history and actions panel, so you need to be aware of that. However, when you're working in different workspaces, if you find that a different panel arrangement or something suits you, you'll be able to go ahead and customize that workspace to suit your needs. And we're going to be talking about how to customize your workspace in the very next lesson.